So, what is the Great Force Campaign? A lot of you are probably acquainted with capital campaigns where an organization, a nonprofit, is going to build a building, has a new specific project that they're raising money for. And it's similar to that because our goal is to raise a significant amount more of money, but as I understand it, similar to a university campaign where every dollar counts. And the whole reason is to strengthen the organization and to expand our reach and to deepen our impact. We realized several years ago that there were a couple donors that we were very dependent on, and those donors were going to time out, and that we needed to do something to strengthen the finances of the organization so we could continue to deliver the mission. And that's where Kurt came in, and we hired Kurt as a consultant and did a um, assessment of where we were and started the campaign. So, next slide, please. So, what we're gonna show you today is the strategic plan that was from fiscal year 2019 to 2021. And that was the strategic plan before the Great Force Campaign. And then the results between 22 and 24, the year we just completed, and actually some numbers into this year, and what we've been able to accomplish because of the campaign. And as we're going through this, if you have any comments or questions that you want to raise or ask, please do. So next slide. So at the heart of everything is the strategic plan. And we have two principles, and those principles are culture of philanthropy. And you can see in the circles there that it wraps around each one of the circles, along with diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the culture of philanthropy, Kurt's our expert on that. So I'm going to ask Kurt to give us a little color commentary on that.
Thank you, Karen. Underneath all successful organizations that raise philanthropic dollars to support their mission and create impact is this concept that we call a culture of philanthropy, where the entire organization, not just the development director and not just the CEO or executive director, are facing into and leaning into, I should say, philanthropy as an important source of revenue to support their mission. I often say that organizations, especially organizations like the Rankin Foundation that are doing such great work, are not beggars. They do not stand on a corner with a tin cup and ask for money. They position themselves with philanthropists based on the excellent work they're doing, the excellent people that are doing that work, and the recipients of the support that the Rankin Foundation gives. Those stories are powerful. So we created a eight. Me and myself and some colleagues created characteristics of a culture of philanthropy. This is 8 characteristics that we have seen over the last 30 to 40 years of organizations that have been excellent at raising money, taking care of their donors, and building long-term relationships with their donors where they have a shared interest in that. In the case of Rankin Foundation is those that receive the funding and go on to live excellent lives and achieve great things. When I looked at the Rankin Foundation to start, they were doing a really great job. Right now, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think they're like a 9.8. They are doing such great work. The entire organization has leaned into this idea about just what they are really there to do and to support these women that need these scholarships to complete their education. And over the course of 3 to 4 years, I've really admire the Rankin Foundation for how excellent they have become at doing the work that they are doing.
You, Kurt. And the diversity, equity, and inclusion is our other principle that wraps around everything we do. So it's a part and parcel of how we do our business with how we treat our scholars, our board, the makeup of our vendors, the people who all the people who work with us. and make it happen every day. So it's a critical piece of what we do. Then there's three circles of areas. So organizational excellence, which is getting the right team together to do the work, and finances. No money, no mission. So having a strong financial situation. And that is something we've worked hard on and we've done well with over the years. So then there's programmatic impact, which is all about the program and providing the scholar grants and the support for the women we serve. And brand elevation is because if nobody knows about us, they're not going to give money to us. So kind of like Kurt was talking about it, it's tied very closely with the culture of philanthropy. So all those three intersect to help us do our mission, which is transforming lives through education. And note, we don't just say for the woman. This is the impact is for the family and for the community, and it has a ripple effect through the generations. We've been giving scholarships now for almost 50 years, so that's like 3 generations of folks that have been impacted by what we do. So that's the strategic plan. Next slide. So let's start with organizational excellence. Here's the difference between when we had no campaign and when we started the campaign. So we had 2 full-time staff for 8 years, about 8 years. It was Latrina and I were the 2 full-timers, and we always had incredible interns from the University of Georgia, really smart young women helping us do everything we needed to do. Michelle came on as president in 2019. And then we have a 1099 finance director. Kurt came on in first of in 21, as I mentioned, and then we hired Lori Warden as a communications consultant at the tail end of that. Fast forward to fiscal year 2024, and we have 8 full-time staff. So now you've met Cynthia. Latrina couldn't be with us today, but Latrina is our program director and has been with us for the 9 years that I've been here. Breezy Barcello is 3 years on. Lori Smoker just started. She's a tribal scholar support specialist. Maheen, you met a minute ago. Jashandra's our admin executive, and Tiana is another tribal scholar support specialist, along with our 1099s. So we have tripled full-time staff actually. And what a difference it makes that what we can do when you have people, you can get stuff done. Next slide. So let's look at the endowment first of all. When back in before we started the campaign, we had a 900,000 in the endowment, and to date now we have 2.7 million. So it's been a steady increase, and you can see a significant increase from FY24 and year to date. So that's the difference a campaign can make. Next slide. Here is the actual revenues and the expenses. So the green line are the revenues. And in FY22, when we began the campaign in earnest, we had a wonderful year because all our friends and family came forward and supported us in a wonderful way. Income dropped a little bit the next year, but we bumped it back up in FY24, and we're doing great this year. And you can see, of course, the expenses go up too, because we are able to do more once we're raising more money. Next slide. Our net assets, of course, have increased too. You can see it's a pretty steady line upwards, starting out at 964,000 back in FY19 and now at 4,386,000. The program impact is just amazing. So you look at the chart on the left, and in FY19, 20, and 21, we had 135. In FY20, we raised the amount of the scholar grant to 2,500 from 2,000, and took down the number of scholars we could support because we hadn't started the campaign at that point, so we weren't sure about it. So it went down to 86 folks. So in that strategic plan, year, it was 331. Now, the last 3 years that we just completed, it was 516 scholars we were able to support. And this year, we're at an all-time high of 225 scholars. Next slide. So in FY20, we had 110, and FY25, we got 225. That's a 100% increase. So this is what we can do when we have a campaign and we have the funds to support the scholars with not only the money, but with all the services. We'll talk some more about that in a minute. Okay, next slide. So when you have one program person, which was Latrina, the year we had 135 scholars. She remember she told me when the year was over, she said, I don't know how I did that, but Karen, it's not sustainable. And I'm okay, noted. So between 19 and 21, the things we did, we did Zoom notifications. The pandemic helped us figure that out, that we could call people up and tell them. So we got those wonderful reactions hearing when they found out the news. We added a new scholar orientation. And I met with an alumni person for a university, I'd say back in 2018, 2019. And she said to me, Karen, you need to start with your scholars when they start with the organization. She said, we have to start with freshmen if we want them to donate once they've graduated. And the light bulb went on. And I said, we have to engage. So between that and the pandemic happening, we had a call for the pandemic, and we realized, like, they were all looking at the Zoom at each other and going, oh my gosh, there's other people that look like me that are part of this program. So that was the aha moment too. So we started with an orientation and then do an orientation every year too for the renewals. So that's a moment of community building where they see that there's a whole lot of folks in the same boat they're in. And then one of our donors, Alyssa, suggested that we consider an emergency fund during the pandemic, and what a great idea. So we did a special fundraising push and established the emergency fund. And the year after that, Synchrony came out and funded us specifically for that, which gave us a lot more designated money specifically for that, and really, really helped us make a huge difference. And the picture here on the left is our alumni advisory board who met in person in June this past year in Athens. That's our office in Athens. And on the right is Breezy, our scholar support specialist, who is going on her 3rd year with us. Next slide. The pictures on the left are, again, the pictures from the advisory board retreat. So the advisory board met virtually all of last fiscal year and then came in person. So then between FY22 and 24, because we had people, we were able to do a whole lot more. So we did the Zoom notifications, scholar orientation. Synchrony provided upskilling workshops in the summertime. We added weekly scholar support hours, which have just been amazing, an amazing resource for the women. And again, building community, and Breezy leads those. And then the Resilience Fund, which we'll show you more about in a moment. We added a scholar support hour on Sundays for the folks that can't make it during the week, and then added the post-grad survey. Part of our challenges were that once a Rankin Scholar graduated, they pretty much disappeared on us. So that was the reason I was talking to the university person about how do you keep them engaged? Because we're curious about, we don't have our own data about how are they doing in their life? Like, what effect has this grant had on their life? Like, what effect has it had on their children? Are they happy with their career? Are they making more money? So we started a post-grad survey so we could start gathering our own information. The Scholar Advisory Board is there, and Latrina started a $5 campaign. So, she said to all the grads, you can, buy a Starbucks, you can pay $5 a month. So that is going well. The goal is to underwrite the cost of a scholar grant for the year. So we have them involved in paying it forward and giving it back. Any comments? All right, next slide. So the Resilience Fund, also known as the Emergency Fund, but we speak in positive language here, so we call it the Resilience Fund. There are three big reasons that are mostly we have replaced water heaters and mini tires and things like that, but in general, it's transportation, car repairs, housing. We've headed off several evictions by calling the courthouse and giving them money, and medical. Because if you don't have a home, it's really hard to go to school. And if you have to drive to school and you don't have a car, it's really hard. Um, we, I'll talk more about the persistence rate, but we really believe this resilience fund has helped up our persistence rate because it's prevented those college career ending events. And we've been able to help people with significant amounts of money. And I'll tell you one quick story. There was one that was like the car repair was like $4,500. It was a lot. And Latrina called the repair shop and gave the mechanic our pitch, and they lowered they lowered the expense by $1,000. So they donated $1,000 to the Rankin Fund. So making friends as we go. All right. So next slide.
I didn't know where my food was going to come from. My lights was in threat of being cut off. I was 2 months behind on my rent, and I had an eviction notice. I called up Breezy. I emailed her. Then we made phone contact. I remember one thing that she said. She said, "Help is only a phone call away." When it comes to Janet Rankin and the emergency resilient funding, help is truly only a phone call away. I don't know how to express how thankful and how appreciative my family are for the things that you guys done for us. If it wasn't for the Janet Rankin Foundation, like I said, I wouldn't be graduating this year. Also, I wouldn't have a home. We wouldn't have food, and we wouldn't have had electricity. So I really want to thank Janet Rankin Foundation for being there for me and my family. Like, it just feels so good to be part of a community that when you need them, they're there.
Oh, the two more.
Karen, we're only showing Felicia here, but we do have 2 other stories that we could send out.
Okay, that's all right. I thought that the 3 videos were on there. All right. All right. So to our persistence rate. We've always had a good persistence rate. And what is a persistence rate? It means the number of people continuing or graduating divided by the whole. So a normal persistence rate for the women in our demographic is 6 to 30%. I think the overall persistence rate for college, period, is something like 55. It's not that high. But ours has, we've done well. We've been above 80% in the past 6 years. I think we've been above 80% since we started counting it, but I've given you since FY19. It went down in 21, 22, and that to me was really the trailing effects of the pandemic. Like I was surprised that we kept the persistence rate up during the pandemic at 88, but you know, there are trailing effects to the pandemic. And then you can see it bumped up to 93, and this past year it was 96%. And that really translates to about 10 people, 12 people. And those are many of the folks that we've helped with the emergency fund. So the wraparound services, because now when someone goes into crisis, like we have a better chance of knowing about it rather than just getting the phone call that, you know, they're dropping out. So we built this wonderful safety net and this community among the women. And Breezy, I should mention, our scholar support specialist, is a Rankin alum, as well as Latrina. Latrina and Breezy both went through the program. They know what it's like to be a single mom, going to school, working, and trying to move it forward. So they've walked in their shoes, and it makes a big difference. All right, next slide. So brand elevation. And we realized when we were working on our strategic plan that most people don't know who Jeanette Rankin is, number one. And hence, most people have no idea what the Jeanette Rankin Foundation is, number two. Jeanette was not from Georgia. So while she was known in the Athens community, she's not well known throughout Georgia. So we hired Lori Borden, Upward PR, and she's out of Missoula. And we decided to focus our first, significant outreach in Montana because, pretty much everybody in Montana knows who Jeanette Rankin is. They learn in second grade, unless, they move in and but everybody knows who she is. And so we focused there. So here are three examples. We had an article in the Billings Gazette. We had several in the Missoulian. We got a lot of great coverage in Montana. And then we got a feature in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And that was in 2022. So next slide. The way you measure things, one of the metric anyway, is unique visitors per month to the publication. So how many people per month come to that publication? And we measured from 19 to 21, we had about a $31 million reach of unique visitors per month. But between 22 and 24, that was 185 million. So it was a 500% increase. So definitely a huge difference. And, we still are just in the shallow end in terms of brand awareness. So we got a ways to go, but we're making progress. So next slide. And Maheen, can you talk about this one?
Yes, of course. So part of what my work is with digital brand elevation is Google Grants. And essentially the goal is to spend 10K a month, and they need a full-time manager. And so we were able to bring on Elevation, who does a lot of our website stuff, in a larger capacity to run our Google Grants, and I touch base with them. And since August, September, when we took off, you can see in this website growth chart that we've seen huge growth just by adding specific keywords and focusing on these three different ways of promoting our brand awareness. So the first is conversion, and these are different ways to give, ways to volunteer, events, and legacy lecture, things like that. After that, resources. So these are resources for our scholars, like the webinars that we have on our website, information about the Resiliency Fund, our scholar grants, which we have 3 different kinds, and frequently asked questions. And then at the end of that is brand awareness, which is our homepage, history of Jeanette Rankin, about us, our staff, our board of directors, everything like that. And our paid search to date is right now for brand awareness, we've spent $5,154, resources, $6,598, and conversion, $702. And the goal is to keep spending more and more to reach that 10K mark, which is the way Google Grants gives to nonprofits for free. That's our money, and we're just trying to put in the work to really make the most.
Yeah, you make the point. They give us, it's a grant. They give us $10,000 a month, but we have to spend that $10,000 by getting people to do clicks. So it takes a couple months to get up to speed, and we're getting up to speed. And if you look at those 3 areas, they coordinate with the strategic plan. So the conversions is organizational excellence, the resources is the programmatic impact, and the brand awareness obviously is the brand awareness. And we've had some like donations, really random, coming in, and I'm wondering if that has something to do with the Google grants. So we're at the very front end of this and learning, and Maheen's doing a great job with it.
Thank you.
All right, next slide.
I was gonna say this is driving a lot of our recruitment efforts right now. So hopefully you guys will hear about that in the future.
So one of the things we like I said, we did our first significant outreach in Montana. And so in FY 19 to 21, we looked at the amount of donations we had from Montana. It was $35,000. And in between 22 and 24, it was 280,000. So almost a 700% increase in Montana. During this campaign, I should mention, we'll talk a little more about it later too, is that we have volunteer committees in different geographical areas of the country. So Montana being a big one, and that's our Montana crew there, along with a few of us from Atlanta who flew in. Next. So Rosie has been leading the charge in Ohio, and we started out with a couple house parties. I think it was 2018, right, Rosie? 2019? And you see the difference there. So Rosie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, it's been really fun doing sort of what we're thinking of as, lots of sort of experimentation and piloting in Ohio. So we formed a committee. I found there with a couple of really, really dedicated and passionate volunteers and donors, significant donors. We formed a committee and we're trying to grow it very specifically with targeted individuals that come from aligned organizations and also with donors. Our main focus at this point is really trying to elevate the brand, get the name out there. And so we're working on a strategy. In fact, we're meeting tomorrow to further develop the strategy of how to get the name out there, mainly through networking, joining particular organizations, and trying to that are aligned with our mission, and then making a speakers bureau available. So it's been really fun, and it's obviously it's a family thing. My mother's picture there is above, and she's one of the donors as well. She has a real passion for the organization as well. So more to come on this. We'll see how things develop.
Yes, and what an amazing result, and with the all volunteer crew out there, Rosie. So thank you so much for everything you're doing and have done to advance the Rankin Foundation.
It's my pleasure.
All right. All right, next slide. Cynthia.
Yeah, so from you can see from 1919 to about 2019, the share of households headed by women increased. It grew by about 17-20% there, and the heads of households headed by African American women increased beyond this to 60%. So we've seen a big increase in heads of households led by women.
Next slide.
And then to kind of go with that, we've also seen a big increase in educational trends. So again, as we look at from 1990 to about 2012, the number of single mothers in college has doubled to 2.1 million women in college. And women now comprise about 19% of campus life.
Huge.
Is
Michelle,
Oh,
the impact of post-secondary education.
yes. Well, there are three basic reasons why post-secondary education matters to anyone who is aspiring to achieve a degree. One is for our population of women, adult women, primarily it's improving health outcomes. It reduces poverty, and it increases the educational outcomes of their children. So these are really three important reasons why the work that we're doing with the adult women going back to school, it has as Karen mentioned earlier, a ripple effect. It has a multi-generational effect. And so we know that also because we now have the capacity to invest in evaluation of longer term outcomes, we're going to be able to see the connection between the higher degree attainment and income earnings, lifetime earnings of our women, so that we know that in addition to the idea of being better prepared for your career, better skilled, more knowledge, you're going to also have more income that we know will help not just the women themselves, but as we mentioned earlier, these women, by the time they're getting into school, they're at peak age. 35 to 55 is a peak career time. And so they're very clear-eyed on what they're aiming for. And so we believe that we'll be able to draw the connection between Rankin's investment in this population and better outcomes for women in this population overall.
Next slide. Michelle?
Well, okay. This 2 million eligible scholars, and we have 1,000 applicants on average every year. So you can see that there's tremendous unmet need in that our even with our increased revenue, we're able to support 225 women, which is our highest number so far in our history. And so the idea of potential impact that Rankin can have is why this strategic growth campaign is so important, because we want to really close that gap in the unmet need in the population across the country. And we believe that this funnel shows you how significant that gap is and how much more work there is for us to do, how much more we want to do, and how much we're building community in order to achieve this growth.
So the challenges, I mentioned a little earlier that we started this campaign because we realized that we had 2 donors that were going to time out in a couple of years, and we needed to replace that funding. We also had a situation fairly early on when I was working where a funder gave us $100,000 one year, and this was on an $800,000 budget, so it was a lot of money. And they gave us $150,000 the next year, and then they changed their priorities and they gave us nothing the next year. And again, on like a $800,000 budget, that was a huge, huge hole to fill. And understand, we support our women up to 5 years. Now, many women come to us when they're a junior, but it might take them 3-4 years to finish those last 2 years. So we commit for 5 years, and that was always the Rubik's Cube to me at the end of the year to go, okay, how many scholar grants are we going to give next year? So really looking for continuity and a solid base of support. So we have incredible foundation and corporation support right now, and we don't know what the future holds. Kurt, can you talk a little bit about what the individuals as opposed to corporations and foundations for funding an organization?
Sure. So the reason that the Rankin Foundation and others really should focus their efforts on individual donors overall is that when you look at USA, Giving USA's data that they put out every year usually comes out in June. If you do the math through all of that, you see that corporations give 5 to 7%. I think this year was the highest I've seen in a long time. It's 7. Usually it's around 7% of the overall pie, where individuals give about 85%. And when 85% of any pie is, a certain population, you want to focus your limit, especially nonprofit organizations, you want to focus your limited resources on the biggest opportunity for you. And so that's the primary reason.
Yes, and right now, well, as of last year, it was probably 40% was from foundations and corporations in terms of supporting the Rankin Foundation. So our goal really is to build that support from individuals. And the other thing is the endowment currently supports the scholar grants. So the amount of money that we give each woman. And as Michelle pointed out several years ago, she said, the secret sauce of the Rankin Foundation is this wraparound support, the fact that we create community, and we've gotten better and better at it over the years of creating community. And so we need to figure out how to support that long term. And I always talk about the endowments like the Rankin as a woman and the endowment as your 401k. So we need money in that 401k. It's really important for a woman to have her own money, so she's not at the not at the whims of some corporation or foundation and their decisions. So that's really our long-term goal, to make sure that we can always deliver this mission for the women who need us. All right, next slide.
This quotation from Jackie Zehner, who's one of the first women partners at Goldman Sachs, actually. She's now started her own organization focused on women in finance. And this quote she came out with just recently: many issues are labeled women's issues when at their core, they're economic issues. And we believe at Rankin that what we've learned from our population, our community of women that we're working with, is that indeed their challenge in pursuing higher education is not because of academic preparedness. It's really because of the fragility of their economic situation. As you can see from the difference that the Resilience Fund is making in their ability to complete their degree, we know that framing these issues as economic at their core is very important. And one of the things that I love about Rankin is how much we are learning. And because we're not just transactional in writing these checks to women, we are investing in their lives, and we are learning from them, really, because the people with the problems really actually have the solutions, is what our experience has been. And so we're learning that the economic fragility of this population is really at the heart of the challenges that this population is experiencing. And so that's why we are investing in looking at longer term outcomes, looking at what difference this educational achievement is making for their families, and the ripple effect it's going to have on the communities where they live, and actually for our society as a whole. There are many layers to this, which is beyond what we're going to talk about, what we have been talking about today, in the sense that, if you look at society, our social history in this country, a lot of the changes have been made because of strong advocacy. There's been advocacy on early childhood development that taught us a lot about brain development, and over the years. There's been advocacy for senior citizens that created AARP and all the focus on the retirement population. There's been focus on adolescence and youth development. But this population of women, which you can see in terms of single parents going to college now, the population has doubled. But there hasn't been any focused advocacy for this population. So we are terming it the missing middle. The missing middle are the women, adult women in our age cohort of 35 and above, who are raising children, working full and part-time, and also many times caring for their elderly parents. And so all at the same time, they're doing that while they're pursuing a higher education, because they're motivated to try to lift their families out of poverty or near poverty and get into the middle class so that they can have better outcomes and better futures for their families. And so we believe that part of what we're learning is the need for advocacy at the institutional level, at the colleges level. Universities are in a whole new transformative stage themselves. And with the student population increasingly becoming adult women primarily, who are now almost 50% of all college attendees are women. And of that, you said earlier before, of the college campus are occupied by parenting mothers, single mothers primarily. And so the colleges can have some adaptation to make, to facilitate the women completing their education. And secondly, interventions at the federal and state level to create new funding ideas that support this population of women. For example, the Pell Grant that pays tuition. Can there be a special Pell Grant that increases the amount that covers the unmet financial needs of this population in particular? Because the data shows that they have about 40% more, no, I'm sorry, they have about $6,000 per year of unmet financial need on campus compared to the general population of students. Can there be more funding in childcare programs? Because childcare is a huge obstacle for all working women, and particularly for our women who are lower income level. So there are many ways, there are many needs for advocacy for this missing middle to make them visible, because they're an important part, not just of the higher education sector, but of our employment sector as well. And the world of work is changing, and these adaptations are a sense of urgency for us. And we believe that part of our strategic growth and what we're learning is and building community among our alums is how much stronger this population is and how important they are to the future economic health of our country.
Thank you, Michelle. Yes, the missing middle.
Well, Jeanette
Excellent.
passed away at 92, and in her will, she specifically identified that she wanted her estate to support mature, unemployed women workers. And for all the reasons that we just talked about, this is really what drives the mission of the Rankin Foundation. We are supporting this population through higher education attainment, because we believe that that's the pathway to economic security and self-sufficiency, especially important in a society where the social fabric is a bit fragile right now. And so for our population of women, we believe that what Rankin is doing, not just in giving scholar grants, but in providing a vast array of support services, that's the differential that we bring to the marketplace that's working with this population. And I think that's really what inspires all of us at the organization to keep our heads down and to build this campaign to increasingly close the gap that these women are experiencing in their lives.
Thank you. Next slide. So the long-term vision really is to deepen our impact for all the things that, all the reasons that Michelle just cited, and building an endowment that creates funding every year for the scholar grants as well as for the services. And then the bigger issue, again, as Michelle was referencing, addressing this as an economic issue on a national level, really inspired by Jeanette Rankin, because she was all about women and children. It didn't pass while she was in Congress, but she was a lobbyist afterwards, and the legislation she got passed was the first that supported women and children. And some of it ended up in the Social Security Act. So this is very much what Jeanette Rankin would be thinking. We are inspired by her every day, and really work to take her legacy forward, her legacy of celebrating and advocating for education and for women and children. So next slide. So here's the map, and all those little purple dots are where scholars are. And the black stars are where we have started with this campaign with regional areas where we have volunteer committees. So New York, New Jersey area, Cincinnati, the greater Cincinnati area with Rosie, Athens and Atlanta in Georgia, and in Montana. And we have like I said, we have a volunteer committee in each one of those places. And the idea is to continue to develop those areas and raise more funds regionally as we continue with this campaign. Next slide. You're on mute, Cynthia.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so along with being inspired by Jeanette and just her tenacity and passion, we're also regularly inspired by our scholars. And we often hear from them through, via the peer-to-peer groups, but also through letters of thanks. And we've begun, I would say, like regularly incorporating these into our staff meetings, our board meetings, really to remind us again and again why we do this work, and why this work is so important. So this one is from one of our scholars named Alexis. She says, "My name is Alexis G, and I'm a Rankin Scholar currently living in North Carolina. Your support has allowed me to obtain a BS degree in engineering management at Arizona State University. I am so grateful that our paths have crossed. In return for you supporting my education, I hope and pray that you are blessed and prosperous in all your endeavors. Please accept my deepest gratitude for changing my life and transforming my future. Alexis G." So, thank you.
you, Cynthia. Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're so true. So true. So, next slide. Thank you for being a great force. If you're watching this, you have made a huge difference in people's lives. And for all, like we said earlier, not just the scholar, but the scholar's children, the community they live in, and the economy of the United States. And there's a saying, if you're going to be for me early. And you have been for us early. And we appreciate that so much, and hope that you continue with us on this journey and give us your feedback and your support and your community. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.